Pixa, Pixa, Pixa.
Oh my gosh, you woke me up. What is it? I just got done with my 2-hour video.
Yeah, and you said you'd have another video out to make up for it taking so long.
I literally never said that.
Yeah, but you were thinking it, so get off your butt and start editing.
Oh my gosh, come on.
You wouldn't break another promise, right? Like when you promised you'd be with your last girlfriend forever? Or when you'd promised you'd be more financially responsible this year? That relationship lasted 2 weeks, and your bank account's only got 6 cents left in it.
Alright, you can call me lazy, you can call me non-committal, but you can't, what was that third thing you said again?
I called you broke.
And you can't call me broke. I'll do the video and I'll make it the best yet. Wait, how do you know all that stuff? I just met you. Man, I really am milking this video format, aren't I? Whatever, that doesn't matter because I am back with more delectable, cozy, and obscure RPGs for you to listen to me talk about and maybe play for yourself. Now, if there's one thing you need to know about me, I am a 3DS connoisseur. It is the main thing I use for gaming, but despite that, I don't really play 3DS RPGs. I mean, I use my 3DS to play RPGs, but not of the 3DS variety. And it's weird because the 3DS is actually an RPG powerhouse. It has so many great, underrated RPGs just stuck on the system, waiting to be rediscovered. It's gotten to the point where almost all 3DS exclusive RPGs could be considered obscure when taking into account the wider gaming space. Go on the street right now, just do it, and ask somebody if they know what the Legend of Legacy is. I don't even know what that is, man. I found playing all of these super enjoyable because if you didn't know, I played all of these during my first ever semester of college. It sure was something coming back to my dorm after one of the most eventful days of my life, cozying up in bed to play a bunch of 3DS RPGs I haven't touched since like elementary school. And I think the actual size of the 3DS helps me visualize all of these games as their own little things existing only on the system. It makes them feel really immersive in that sense. The limitations of the 3DS are clear, but they still managed to fit these little bustling worlds and societies into barely a few gigabytes of space. When I play these, I almost forget we're in the year 2026. I mean, I vividly remember when it was still 2017 and they were releasing games for this thing. That was almost a decade ago, man. The 3DS has been a presence in my life for over half of my entire time being here. I am recording this on real authentic hardware with a 3DS capture card and everything. No emulators, not that horrible streaming thing that makes the footage look more grainy than a recording from World War I. You're here for a reason, viewers, so sit back, get a lot of snacks, pretend it's 2017, and listen to me yap endlessly about the 3DS in life. Okay, adding this game in the video feels like cheating, so I'm putting it here first and for a good reason, mind you. This game isn't obscure for a really funny reason, actually. It released at the tail end of the 3DS's life and didn't get as much attention as it probably would have gotten if it came out earlier. And even though I would have never really called it a forgotten game, it was pretty overlooked. Up until recently, where it's in basically every single 3DS RPG video ever. I mean, seriously. Every single 3DS RPG recommendation video introduces this thing as a hidden gem, which was maybe true at the time, but not anymore. It's not so hidden at all, and I'd say that it's gotten the respect it deserves, but even then, to those of you who aren't in tune with the 3DS library, you probably don't know what this is. I remember seeing the trailer for it in 2017 and being intrigued, but nothing more. I eventually picked it up physically in the summer of 2020 and played a good bit of it. Curse old me for selling this to buy Mario All-Stars, by the way. I still regret it 6 years later. I am not over that. Oasis is a lot of things. It's an RPG, obviously, a life sim, a town builder, a farming sim. It has everything. It all comes together so perfectly in such a nice little bow, and it doesn't feel as though they just kept adding features without fleshing them out. They're the right amount of simple enough while still having enough depth for it to be engaging. I think this is what 3DS RPGs excel at the most, and is one reason why I love them so much. Almost all of them are filled to the brim with content, but maintains a level of simplicity that keeps them accessible. Sometimes I want to take a break from 70-hour RPGs with a trillion mechanics and a long-ass storyline. That's not to say these games can't get complex, but they're much more minimalistic, mainly due to the technical limitations. And the more surface level approach to the different systems in these games doesn't automatically make them less engaging. In fact, a part of me wants to say they're actually more engaging because of this. Think of it in terms of Animal Crossing. I mean, excuse me for getting a little bit too opinionated here, but New Leaf is just superior to New Horizons in every way for me. New Horizons I felt has too much going on, while New Leaf has just the right amount. In New Leaf you can play 30 minutes a day, and that's more than enough to maintain your town. In New Horizons it didn't feel that way, and eventually the stress of doing so many tasks every day collapsed on itself and I dropped it. Sometimes it's too much, and that's okay if you have the time and energy, but I certainly didn't have the time or energy to do any of that. And going back to the Animal Crossing thing, if you like Animal Crossing, you'll love this. It's the closest thing you can get to New Leaf on the 3DS. The vibes are completely there, and you'll see what I mean as I detail you more about the game itself. You play as this little seedling guy right here who is a caretaker of a massive oasis. Oases in this world are quite rare and have been decreasing due to something called the Chaos. A very original name, by the way. With the help of this water spirit named Esna, you two aim to build a sanctuary for any refugees and travelers seeking rest. Seeing your oasis grow brings me an immeasurable amount of satisfaction, even more so given how much power you have over certain aspects. Manage the town layout, stimulate your economy through festivals, and send residents on expeditions. I'm glad the developers had the foresight to allow you to automate certain things, as it eliminates any of the potential tedium of growing the settlement while still keeping things satisfying. And satisfying is the best way to describe this thing. Well, that and the word cozy, which I'll get into in a bit. Battles and battle movement is extremely satisfying. It has me fighting under-leveled enemies just for the sake of enjoyment. Collecting revenue from the shops you funded, inviting new travelers into your town, collecting materials, figuring out puzzles, it all comes together perfectly. Literally every single aspect of this game comes together absolutely flawlessly. Well, okay, not everything. It's not common, but sometimes in dungeons, you need to backtrack home and switch party members to use their abilities in a certain spot. And since you can only have 2 other party members, you might need to switch a few times to get through everything. There's also the beginning, which has a slow start that might turn some people off. I don't mind slow starts in RPGs, but something about 3DS RPGs is just different. They tend to kind of baby you at first and bombard you with dialogue that makes you think, I forgot I'm not this game's target audience. It gets so much better after the opening, so don't let it discourage you because it doesn't last the whole game, I promise. Those are my only nitpicky qualms with the game, and they only encompass about 1% of the total playtime anyway at most. The rest will be spent in this gorgeously cozy setting. Ever Oasis is easily one of, if not the best looking 3DS game ever made. In fact, aesthetically, it's one of my favorite games of all time. I have a huge emphasis on huge bias for the 3DS aesthetic. I mean, for one, I literally grew up with it, and as a kid, I actually preferred the way 3DS games looked compared to Switch games. I was used to playing pretty high definition things on my Xbox. Yes, I was an Xbox kid, and I kind of regret it, but also at the same time, not really. The first time I ever saw a 3DS for myself in person, I was kind of disgusted. That's so dumb, I'm sorry. I had buyer's remorse, and I wasn't even the one that bought it, but it quickly grew on me and is one of my favorite things in gaming ever. The low resolution forces them to make objects pop in the environment more, also forcing them to give the setting more saturated, vibrant colors. You see, this low resolution forced developers to take a lot of really creative artistic decisions that probably wouldn't be made otherwise. I mean, compare this game to the Xenoblade port, a game I'll be talking about further down the line. One thing I will say about the Xenoblade port, it just looks like a pixelated mess. It's so hard to see what's going on sometimes. That's not to say it's unplayable or even a huge complaint I have with the game. I mean, it comes with the territory of it being a 3DS game in the first place. But it's a nice contrast in my opinion, since the Xenoblade art style wasn't designed with the 3DS in mind, and it truly makes me appreciate the art direction taken in many other 3DS games. Especially in stuff like Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which I only know exists because of that neat Animal Crossing crossover they did. I'm literally the only one that remembers that too. Like, I didn't even do research for that, I just know it off the top of my head. I promise, I didn't peak in elementary school, guys. I know it looks like it, but trust me, I didn't. I said before that I don't like desert settings in games, and I really don't, but here it's different. Usually desert settings are kinda half-assed footnotes, but since it's basically an entire setting of this, they did a good job at refining the setting in the world. It's shown that most of this world is dangerous and destitute, which makes the lush green oasis feel only more cozy in comparison. Plus, despite desert being the only thing you see for almost all of the game, it doesn't really get boring, shockingly enough. You would think there's only so much you can do with a set piece that's mainly just sand, but they make the best use of it. Again, I think it's the colors. The bright sand and clear blue sky complement each other perfectly. And when they want to emphasize the isolation and danger of an area, they use blue and purple tones. All the dungeons are also run down desert crypts and caves, and I mean it speaks for itself. You're exploring old ruins infested with creatures. I've talked about this for longer than I would have ever expected, and I actually have more that I want to say, but I need to move on to something else. We got over a dozen other games to talk about, man. Ever Oasis is a 10 out of 10, extremely charming and ambitious for the system. Anybody who plays this will have their soul endeared, and even though I love it, the desert is hot as hell. I'm ready to leave this place and get somewhere cooler. This was only the beginning, folks. That was the appetizer. Let's get into the main course. Also, I played this while listening to Nirvana, not the 90s grunge band, no, the 60s psychedelic Nirvana of the same name, completely unrelated. They sued the other grunge Nirvana though, which is not Cash Money, come on guys. Nirvana was mad that Nirvana was overshadowing Nirvana, so Nirvana sued Nirvana as a way to clear up confusion about which band was the real Nirvana. What am I even supposed to say here? No game in recent memory has left me as speechless and impressed as Radiant Historia. In fact, the themes and gameplay of Chrono Trigger are very present here. And I was already making the Chrono Trigger comparison before I found out about the time travel thing, which is the main theme of this game. It doesn't only deal with time travel, but a combination of that along with alternate timelines. It's super reminiscent of a choose your own adventure type game in the structure. But before I go over any examples, let me give you a quick gist of the story. The world is being engulfed by a mysterious case of desertification. I thought I said no more desert. Whatever, man. I guess. I mean, our goal is to stop this from happening anyway, so I can't be too mad. A lot of the world conflict stems from the decreasing amount of arable land available to the world due to this. And we see much conflict over this situation, with us leading a campaign to not only stop the desert from spreading, but also defending our homeland from invaders. We take the role of a rational and stoic warrior who has the entire weight of the world put on his shoulders, and must navigate through increasingly more dire geopolitical situations that will probably be cripplingly traumatic to a real person. Seriously, if I was given this power, my brain would probably rage quit on me. The power being the White Chronicle, which allows you to see future events, along with switching timelines by time traveling and changing your actions. The realm it takes you to is gorgeous, by the way. In fact, the whole thing is. One thing I love about certain DS and 3DS RPGs is the style of using pixel sprites over 3D environments. Quite a few DS and 3DS RPGs did this, such as the Dragon Quest DS remakes, which are gorgeous, the DS Metal Mech games, and most notably Radiant Historia. It feels like a proto-version of the HD 2D style Octopath Travelers popularized. I prefer this though, as I feel the HD 2D style relies a little bit too heavily on bloom and lighting. It can be excessive at points. I also think it helps that, again, the 3DS is pretty low resolution, so the pixel sprites blend in almost perfectly with the low resolution 3D environments. It's sad that we'll probably never get a game that looks like this ever again. One thing I should mention, by the way, since I am on the topic of the DS, is that this is actually a remake of Radiant Historia, which first came out on the DS. The visual changes aren't huge, but it's enough to make it feel distinct from the DS release. Better character portraits, better battle screen, and better cutscenes. I know the 3DS also adds some extra content, but I couldn't detail what it is since this is the only version I've played. Going back to the story, it is really, and I mean really damn good. It's almost fully voice acted and the narrative is super well paced. On a system with RPGs written for all ages, this felt like a breath of fresh air. Radiant Historia is brutal. The main character has his friends die, and the game basically says that it's all his fault they're no longer alive. I mean, let's say it in the nicest way possible. You can say it's your fault your friends aren't living anymore. It's a great setup for the time travel and alternate timeline mechanic. Seeing all of your friends just gone hammers home its importance. The White Chronicle is cool in the fact that it encourages you to do the same scenario multiple times and choose different outcomes. Sometimes you're forced to do this, but other times it's optional. For example, at the beginning of the game, it makes you choose if you want to stay with your overseer Heist or help your peer Ross with training conscripts. I picked Rosh's route and got pretty far but hit a wall where I got a bad ending. I tried another outcome with him that still ended in an unfavorable outcome. So I chose Heist's route, which proved to be the right choice. I'm fairly confident the first route I took was incorrect for the story, but I like how it is super lenient with choosing the wrong thing. They make sure your time doesn't feel wasted when it happens, and the way it's designed is almost genius in this fact. The theme of your actions having an imprint on the world in different timelines is, again, super reminiscent of Chrono Trigger. The fact that it's optional and sometimes completely missable makes it so much better to discover. And the game clearly lays out what paths you can take, what's a dead end, or paths you missed, so it's not at all a hassle. Battles in Radiant Historia are grid-based and turn-based with some innovations that make it worthwhile to detail. The battle grid comes into account quite a bit when you're fighting. With certain attacks, you're able to attack and move enemies around depending on where you want them to be. Enemies at the back of the grid do less damage, so I usually push them back. You can also push them into other enemies temporarily and attack 2 enemies at once if you time everything right. This is where the turn system comes into account. You're able to forfeit actions and let the enemy go first, and it'll give you more actions after the enemy or enemies are done attacking. You can do this to line up like 9 attacks straight, and it's super satisfying. Although when you forfeit an action for a character, they become red, meaning they're more vulnerable to attacks. So you can't just spam turn skips every battle. The reason why skipping turns and doing so many attacks in a row is beneficial is due to the combo system. With each consecutive attack, you do more and more damage, which is why getting everything lined up is so important. It also does that thing where your party member can defeat an enemy, but the other party member will still attack it if you assigned it to do that, instead of automatically rerouting and attacking another enemy like in other RPGs. This only occurs in older RPGs, mainly as a design flaw rather than an intentional design choice, but is very intentional here. It forces you to pay attention to every turn and make sure each enemy takes just the right amount of damage so a turn isn't wasted. Given that there are so many encounters, I don't play optimally all the time, and it's completely fine if you don't mind taking a little bit of extra damage. Despite me comparing it to Chrono Trigger earlier, it's not as easy as that. I wouldn't call it difficult on normal mode, but it's not brain dead if your progression is normal. Also, one thing to mention is with time travel, everything carries over, even if you go back in time. So if you take the wrong route, don't worry about having your time wasted because everything you acquired will still be there. That's another reason why I don't mind taking the wrong route. It helps me get a little bit ahead in levels, and it doesn't feel like grinding because in the moment, I think I'm progressing the main story. Although with everything I mentioned earlier, the fights are slow. Heck, even the easy fights are slow. And if you're dumb enough like me, the easy fights can turn into difficult fights if you're not paying attention. Another game this reminds me of is Black Sigil, another sort of Chrono Trigger reminiscent game I featured in my 3DS video. Sorry if the footage looks horrible by the way, I deleted all of my old recordings for space, so I don't have them anymore. And I don't think there's a single high resolution recording of this game online, so we're just gonna have to deal with this. Everything from the tone, the art, and the setting reminds me of that. It's funny because despite Black Sigil being way more obscure than this game, I only found about this one until recently. That's the main reason why I made this video. So many great RPGs slip through the cracks, and even stuff that wouldn't really be considered obscure is still massively overlooked by even people who like the system. Anyway, enough yapping about this gem. Let's move on to a series you are all familiar with, but a game you probably haven't heard of. Also, I played this while listening to a lot of disco, most notably the Wild and Peaceful album. Jungle Boogie makes me dance like I'm on coke. The Dragon Quest series is probably my biggest weak point as an RPG fan. I've only ever played 2 Dragon Quest games, DQ11 and DQ9, and even then I've beaten neither of those. I mean, I technically beat 11, but it's pretty agreed on that if you haven't beaten the 3rd act, you haven't actually beaten the game, so despite having over 80 hours, I don't count it as having beaten it. And with Dragon Quest, I got like right to the end, and I just dropped it. I couldn't do it anymore. I'm sorry, I like that game, but I just couldn't do it. There are quite a few RPG enjoyers who haven't delved into the Dragon Quest series because, frankly, it's kinda a Herculean task. These games are long, to the point where the mainline SNES releases and DS release is probably the same length as a long-ass modern RPG. Dragon Quest VII is notorious for how long it is, fucking 108 hours on how long to beat, and guaranteed it'll take even longer than that because they always undercalculate how lengthy a game is on that site. I don't have the time for that, and even if I did, I don't have the commitment for that either. In reality though, the main reason why I've held off on these games is the series feels like the final boss of RPGs. So many of the things we love about the genre today originated or were popularized by the series. My favorite piece of trivia that nobody knows is they invented the mystery dungeon format with Chronicle no Daibokin. I said that wrong, but you can read it. Not only does playing Dragon Quest feel like a journey, it also feels like a history lesson. It's like watching an old beloved movie and constantly saying, is that where that's from? And one of the things Dragon Quest innovated on was monster taming. They didn't invent it, but the format we're most familiar with today had its origins here. The first Dragon Quest with monster taming was Dragon Quest V, and ever since then, it's been a pretty big staple in the series. With that obviously came spin-offs, and there's so many Dragon Quest monster tamers. The most notable is probably the Joker series, and this is actually my first Joker game ever. I didn't know what to expect going in, and boy was I surprised. I know I keep saying that, but these 3DS RPGs are they're just so good, okay? You don't expect them to be this good. This was actually a Japan only release, and it sucks how when it comes to Dragon Quest, they always get the best stuff. Promotional material, events, features, games. I am still mad that Dragon Quest X is as inaccessible as it is. My buddy played the entire thing for months in Japanese, despite not being able to understand a word. That's how good it is. I know there's a full translation for the online version if I'm not mistaken, but the offline version is still being worked on. I know there's thousands of hours of content only available to hardcore Dragon Quest fans over here, and that sucks for us. There's also the 3DS Dragon Quest XI remake. Yes, this is very real. This makes me understand how it feels to love someone that doesn't even know you exist. I mean, it doesn't know I exist because it's not real, but still, I couldn't play this if I wanted to. Nobody wants to translate this because it's seen as an inferior version of the regular release. And if I'm being unbiased, it kinda is. And there is just not enough of an audience to warrant it being translated anyway. It'd be a Herculean task to do so. Luckily, Joker 3 didn't suffer the same fate and actually got a translation, which I'm forever grateful for. It's not a full translation, but it's more than close enough. Ignore the fact that my name is random Japanese characters. I didn't realize they were English characters when I named myself. Joker 3 starts out in a disorienting but refreshing way. Keep in mind, this was one of the last games I played during my 3DS binge, and I was a little burnt out starting this one. It was very pretty looking, I love the environment and stuff, but it didn't catch my interest too much, until it's revealed not even 5 minutes in that we've been living in some sort of Truman Show hellscape, and are immediately thrust into the role of saving these weird lizard creatures from an actual massacre. It sounds so stupid, and keep in mind, this is revealed not even 3 minutes apart from each other. I love it, caught my attention immediately. That's how you start a game. Have you asking so many questions and answering literally none of them until way later on. As you'll see later on in this video, the 3DS has a lot of monster tamers, and apart from it being a Dragon Quest spin-off, I wanted to see how this one would stand out against the others. And in terms of mechanics, it doesn't really. It's a pretty typical monster taming type game. I don't play much of these just due to the fact that Pokemon exists. I'm not a diehard Pokemon fan, but I'd say I'm enough of one to spend hundreds of hours hunting shinies throughout multiple games. I was never huge on monster tamers in the first place, and whenever I feel like playing one, I just play the tons of quality Pokemon games I haven't touched yet, or replay old ones like Black and White or Crystal. I think the biggest thing when it comes to other non-Pokemon monster tamers is the fact that I'm not attached to the designs. It's hard to care sometimes. They're not always the most memorable. Sometimes they're over-designed, other times they're too generic. I think Dragon Quest is where it differs from me. I already adore the Dragon Quest enemy designs, and so having them in a monster tamer is cool because number one, they're freaking cool and cute as hell, and number two, I recognize these enemies from the games, and it's cool that I'm able to finally catch and use them. I love how much party differentiation is emphasized in this. In my footage, you'll see me swap out my monsters a lot, or use an entirely different team, and that's because being flexible with your team layout is encouraged. Since the game is relatively easy, there's not much pressure to optimize your team layout, meaning you can mess around with hundreds of monsters at your disposal. It's very sandboxy in that regard, and given the fact that catching monsters takes little effort or resources, you're encouraged to get everything. You get monsters by beating the ever-living shit out of them, which for some reason encourages them to join you. That's taken the phrase, if you can't beat him, join him, to heart. If I were an enemy, I'd be way too spiteful to do that and accept death at that point, to be honest. Bleed out cinematically in front of the trainer and everything, just to make a point. You probably noticed that when I do this, there's a gauge, and that just shows you the chance they have to join you after each hit, and it goes up the more damage you do. If it fails, the enemy becomes enraged and will do a ton of damage to you, so you gotta be careful who you use this on. Don't use it on big enemies unless you're prepared. I did a lot of stuff off screen and boy did I learn my lesson. When you die, you lose money. And this is one of those RPGs where money is probably more valuable than XP, so you do not want to be losing money in this. By the way, I had so much fun with this that I'm still playing it right now. I've gotten decently far into the game, so some of the stuff I say might not line up with my footage. That applies for a lot of the stuff in my video right now. Guys, my storage is dying, okay? I had to delete every single game I own and hours of footage for other videos just to record all of this, and it's still barely enough. Recording 3DS capture card footage takes up a shocking amount of computer space. Anyway, given the fact that I played this a lot on my own time, you can tell I had a lot of fun. I went from being burnt out on 3DS RPGs to playing like all day for a bit. It respects your time a lot, which makes it super nice to cozy up to. I wake up very early at around 5:30 or 6 a.m. and after breakfast, nothing is better than sitting by my window while the sun beams on the neighborhood and catching monsters on my little 3DS. I know my whole channel is centered around coziness and all that jazz, but I've recently been able to appreciate the beauty of life so much more. I know the present is chaotic and the future is uncertain, but when hasn't it been? When I remove all the noise from my life, stop looking at social media, I find everything much more enjoyable. I lived in this neighborhood for 5 years now, and I've never noticed its true beauty until a month ago. I started turning off all my devices when I pick a game, and just solely focus on it, while having music on in the background instead. I don't even use social media anymore. The only thing I do is listen to music, read, play games, and watch the occasional YouTube video on my free time, like once a week. I've been getting super into 70s rock lately. That shit is fucking awesome. I'm a huge rap listener, and for a good year, rap was the only thing I listened to at all, so I'm glad I got burnt out on it and started listening to vintage rock. It feels weird to call the 70s vintage, but it was over 50 years ago. Soon enough, we'll be calling the 90s vintage, and I'm not ready for that. I wasn't even alive in the 90s, but I always forget how long ago it was given how strong its cultural impact was. But it got me to think, life is stressful sometimes, and I don't need short form content or pessimistic YouTube drama to add to that. I mention this because I think it contributed to my enjoyment of this. I've become happier and more attentive in everything I do, including gaming. Sure, it makes the slow-paced games feel even longer, but when the pacing is just right, oh my gosh, it hits. Joker 3 respects your time a lot. Every single monster, no matter where they're situated, levels up after battles. I know that's more of a preference thing and is actually pretty controversial in stuff like Pokemon with EXP share, but the sandbox nature of this makes any of the problems you had with XP share in Pokemon pretty non-existent. I know when I play Pokemon, I always turn off EXP share when I can. I'm not sure if they let you do that anymore. I know they don't let you do that in Sword and Shield, but as a staunch non-EXP share user, I highly appreciate it here. You also ride monsters which help you unlock certain areas and overcome obstacles. I was shocked by the fact that you could ride practically anything you catch, literally anything, from a tiny slime to a bird to this giant dragon. It's so fun walking around as this fat ass thing terrorizing everything in my sight. It makes me feel like Godzilla. Battles are mostly automated here too, by the way. You can choose what moves you want your party to make, but the default option is automated attacks. In these little trials that you do, you have to automate your party to prove your worthiness, so yeah, it's expected you automate most things. There's quite a bit of customization with movesets. Instead of unlocking abilities and moves with level ups, it has this skill tree type thing, although I'd like to call it a skill line rather than a skill tree. After every certain level, you unlock points and can choose where to allocate them to unlock other abilities and stat boosts. People familiar with the Dragon Quest series already know what this is, and I'm glad it carried over. The whole thing is a perfect mix of the classic RPG format, but solely focused on monster taming. I talked about the story a bit earlier, and I quite like it. The Dragon Quest series never fails when it comes to story. And this is certainly one of the more unique Dragon Quest stories. Humans are absent from this, and I presume that they've gone extinct. You're accompanied by these guys as you try to locate them. The atmosphere in this aspect feels very isolating, being the only known human in the world. But it also makes the environments feel more serene. The plains are peaceful with no civilization or human activity, and the abandoned city is so atmospheric. It's all great. Also great. I wholeheartedly recommend Dragon Quest Monsters Joker 3, although you'll need a hacked 3DS or emulator because, again, It was never released over here. You'll have lots of fun, meet lots of cute and cool monsters, and maybe learn to appreciate life more, I don't know. Also, I listened to West Side Gun's 2005 mixtape. It's the second most 2000 sounding rap album ever. It's funny how amateurish it sounds. He mispronounces certain words here and there, but it adds to the charm, I guess. Final Fantasy Explorers is another game you've probably never heard of from a series that is super well known. I didn't know what to expect from this, and I still don't, ironically enough. I don't know what the heck to call it. I wanted to call it a Monster Hunter type game, and I think that's the closest I could get to pinpointing what this thing's deal is. But I've never played a traditional Monster Hunter game, so I don't even know if the description is accurate. I'm just saying words and hoping they make sense at this point. So viewer, based on my description of this game, it's up for you to decide whether this is reminiscent of Monster Hunter or not. If you haven't played a Monster Hunter either, then figure it out. I don't know, make an educated guess like me. Everything about Final Fantasy Explorers isn't usually what I'd consider traditional when it comes to the Final Fantasy series, even spin-offs. It's wholly unique, and honestly, apart from a few enemies and references to the series, you wouldn't be able to figure out that this is a Final Fantasy spin-off at first glance. There's not much of a story here, and the little there is, I have absolutely zero recollection of. The gameplay mechanics and systems are going to be your focus here, and man, there's a lot. Look at this tutorial it provides you with at the start of the game, just a non-stop wall of text. In all fairness, not only are they completely optional to read, but they also spoon-feed you these at a slower pace throughout the game as you encounter them. But this is so much to memorize, and applying it to gameplay can be a bit challenging, just due to how much there is to remember. If you like intricate systems in your RPGs, this will provide you with quite a bit of satisfaction, and putting what you learned into action can be a nice but satisfying challenge. The gameplay loop comprises of taking missions of varying quality and fulfilling their requirements. It can include using certain abilities, defeating a certain amount of enemies that may only be located in a specific region, or defeating a boss. There are also subquests. You can take multiple of these at a time, and they mostly involve mundane stuff like collecting a certain material, using a certain ability, yada yada yada, you get the point. The main quests are the focal point of the game, more so than I expected. Usually Final Fantasy games have side content and optional stuff, but this is super railroaded. It's basically impossible to do anything new without advancing the main agenda. Every single mechanic ties back to the main gameplay loop. Nothing exists in a vacuum. I also must say, progression wise, it's quite different from what I expected going in. There's no traditional XP from defeating enemies or stat gains from leveling up. Instead, you have an explorer level which simply demonstrates your rank. Instead, the main form of progression is in Gil, and this unfortunately abbreviated thing called crystal points. Could have called it CRP or something, guys. I mean, come on. With CRP, you can do stuff like unlock new moves, upgrade existing moves, and even create your own move types. Gold is also used to buy and upgrade equipment. These two things are the main points of progression, so in that sense, randomly attacking any enemy you see is actually a bit futile. I did this anyway out of habit, but the only thing you'll gain from this is resources you might need later on to get certain items. You can also have multiple party members in the form of monsters. Yes, there is a monster taming mechanic in this. With the right materials, you can create monsters and have them fight alongside you. Unlike your player character, these monsters do gain levels and have pretty basic RPG type progression. I swear the 3DS is a powerhouse for monster taming type games. You'll see even more of this later on. You're gonna see it like a lot. It's a good compromise for those who still want a classic type RPG progression system in a game where it's absent for most of it. Combat-wise, things are fleshed out to a good degree. I mean, look at this tutorial again. It better be fleshed out. For the main game, a lot of these mechanics can be neglected, and you can still play pretty well. But for some of the harder stuff and post-game content, I bet you can't ignore any of this. There is a combo system, elemental affinities, a bunch of specific status effects that you'll ignore for most of the game until very specific instances. Magic was my main form of battles as I chose Black Mage as my class, so you'll see me spamming a lot of spells. You actually have to line up your character correctly to make sure the spell doesn't miss. You can have a total of 8 spells and abilities equipped at any given time, but to be honest, you'll only be using like a rotation of 3 or 4 of them, save for bosses. Which, by the way, the bosses in this are pretty great. They require actual skill and thinking to beat. If you're good enough, you can completely dodge most attacks and use their weaknesses against them. The first 3 bosses are some of the typical elemental summons in the Final Fantasy series, and it's a nice novelty to be fighting them. Shiva was the most memorable for me. He aggravated me so bad, but in hindsight, it was 100% an absolute skill issue on my part. Most of her attacks are easy to predict if you have any foresight and intelligence. I have neither of those things. The attacks where she freezes your character aggravated me the most, but again, it's supposed to be easy to dodge. The areas in this were also pretty fun to explore. The actual themes and set pieces aren't even super complex or unique, but for what they are, they're pretty great. My favorite is obviously the beach. I mean, you guys know I love beaches. The Stormy Cloud area was also cool to me. Layout wise, it was one of the more unique areas. At the beginning, you have to walk most places on foot, which makes the first few hours quite slow, but you eventually unlock fast travel that allows you to travel to specific points on the map. Still quite a bit of walking and backtracking though. That's one thing I will say, given that this is the main and only gameplay loop, it gets so repetitive. I don't blame anyone for not beating this because, guys, let me say it again, it gets repetitive. It might look like I'm repeating footage here, but I'm really not. You're going to be seeing me do the same things over and over again, going to the same areas over and over again so many times. And like I said, given that the only real form of progression isn't completing quests, it feels completely pointless to have to go through so much of the same stuff constantly. It'd be one thing if I was gaining levels by defeating the same enemies I fought hundreds of times, but nah. Eventually the game will start to get quite grindy in a way I don't like. Earlier I said the main form of progression is money, and that's true, but to get certain weapons, equipment, and items, you'll have to farm drops from certain enemies. I actually like crafting in most RPGs. Usually it's optional, out of the way enough to where it doesn't feel like a slog. Here, it's not at all optional, and having to track down the resources I need to not get absolutely decimated later on can feel pretty demotivating. I like it when crafting and going out of your way to get stronger gear feels optional, because it feels like I'm being rewarded for going out of my way to get stronger stuff. Not only is it, for the third time, completely repetitive here, it's forced, and when it comes to RPG progression, nobody likes when something feels forced. The illusion of choice in a lot of other RPGs is what makes them feel so rewarding. Deep down in other games, I know I'm following a set path the game put me on, but it still feels like I'm progressing autonomously from what the game wants. In reality though, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. It's an invisible hand. Here that hand is glaringly obvious and pushes you around to keep doing stuff. That's why I emphasize the lack of non-main game related content. Since everything is tied to the main game, anything somewhat optional will still feel forced to an extent. It definitely brings this down as an experience for me, and overall, I'm not sure if I'd recommend it. I'm certainly not going back to it, but if it interests you, viewer, play it for yourself. It might actually be your thing, never rule that out. For me though, I'm taking one last look at this beach and then I'm getting the hell out of here with my guild. And I'm not saying that shit. During this, I listened to Pharrell Williams' first solo album. It was the most 2000 sounding rap album ever made, with West Side Gun's album being the second most, of course. The Persona series, SMT games, Atlas. I still haven't played any Persona or SMT. I own 3 Persona games, and I've only played Persona 3 PSP for an hour at most. I don't know why, but I've been saving these games for a special occasion. What occasion that is, I have no idea. Maybe it's an excuse just not to play them. Last year, I accrued over 100 hours of Metaphor ReFantazio and still haven't beaten that. Every time I thought it was going to be over, it just kept going. I love the game, but man, the fatigue I got from that being the only game I played for months was just huge. The fact that I haven't experienced any Persona actually makes playing this as my first Persona a bad idea. Not only is it a spin-off, it's a spin-off that expects you to have a good understanding of the mainline games. And it's a crossover, which means nothing to me because I haven't played any of the things they're crossing over anyway. They don't spend that much time introducing who these people are or any concepts most fans already understand. Even though it leaves me feeling disoriented, I appreciate this a lot. I hate it when spin-off games or licensed games talk to the player like they're unfamiliar with the source material. I'm supposed to know who these characters are, their personalities, and their rapport with each other. Even though I was pretty lost at the beginning and frankly, completely disoriented, I was able to piece together enough to make sense of what's going on. Again, it's a crossover between Persona 3 and Persona 4, which would probably be so cool to me if I had actually played either of those games. I chose the Persona 3 route since it's the one I'm the most familiar with. Since I don't think I could accurately convey the story to any of you Persona fans, I'll dive straight into the gameplay. Don't worry any non-Persona fans, if you get confused, you'll still probably be less confused than I am. It's a first-person dungeon crawler where you explore these labyrinths. It reminds me quite a bit of Etrian Odyssey, also an Atlas release. I've never even played Etrian Odyssey. You know, I think anything released by Atlas is just bound to get overlooked by me at this point. Etrian Odyssey is one of those series where people know what it is, but you'll be hard-pressed to find people who have thoroughly played it. Anyway, yeah, it reminds me of that format, a format I wasn't super familiar with until playing this. In fact, I think it might be the first full-fledged game of this type that I've ever played. I quite like the gameplay loop here. Like Final Fantasy Explorers, it has a hub world, and most mechanics are there to strictly serve the main objective. There's quite a bit of strategizing when it comes to dungeon crawling. They purposely make certain things less convenient for gameplay reasons that make sense. Fast travel does exist in dungeons, but only in specific instances. There are a few fast travel spots located in each floor, and you must remember what spot leads where. You must mark or memorize where certain spots are, as running out of items and materials in dungeons can be a death sentence. You're forced to be rational. It's cool because it keeps your brain active throughout all of the gameplay. Instead of turning your brain off when not in battle and turning it on in battles, you have to be attentive to both. Battles themselves are pretty standard. The main thing I'll focus on is the weakness mechanic. If an enemy is weak to something and you utilize that weakness, the next turn, all special moves are free of cost to use. If you optimize battles, you can get through an entire floor with plenty of MP left without having to replenish too much. This is particularly great for stuff like healing. It basically acts as an infinite source of HP gain if you're strategic about it. First-person battles are also pretty cool. I tend to forget how little modern RPGs actually have first-person battles. It's novel to see that format in a modern game. Oh, this came out 12 years ago? What? I hate this video because it keeps reminding me of how fast time moves forward. I haven't done anything in those 12 years too. Crazy. Soon enough, this video will be older than I am. Right now, I don't like thinking about it. Enemy designs are also pretty great. They're expressive and very creative. I'm sure these enemies appear in the mainline series, but this is my first exposure to them. The animated cutscenes here are also fantastic. The art style is great, and I think I'll leave it at that. Maybe if I did my personal homework, I'd enjoy this even more than I do currently. But even then, I still really enjoyed it and definitely would recommend. It has my stamp of approval. For this, I was listening to Joey Valance and Bray, a relatively new rap rock group. They kind of remind me of the Beastie Boys. They're playing in my city and I was gonna go, but guess what? I'm broke. Fragrant Story is the very last 3DS game to get a physical release. And it's an RPG. What an absolute gift. Such a great console for RPGs, got a great send-off in the form of, you're telling me, the main story of this game, which is $35, $70 if you bought the special edition, is only 3 stages long. Three stages, okay. Okay, look, we can do that. We can work that. Surely there's more to it. I mean, if I look into it enough, it has a free DLC, and digitally it was only $4, but literally the main story only has 3 stages. That's kind of crazy. I feel like the real main story was the DLC, and they just labeled it as a free DLC to make it sound like they were being generous. This isn't even me creating some kind of conspiracy theory either. They did this with another game too, and the free DLC didn't even release until like almost 2 years after the main game. I'm pretending to be shocked by this, but I've actually known about this for a few years. I was there when it first released, actually. Everyone at the time was calling it a scam and a cash grab, just trying to create profit off of being the last physical 3DS release, and by God it worked. I hadn't kept up with it since then, so all of this other stuff is new to me. It's such a funny rabbit hole, man. That Otosan game, you know people feel cheated when they're mad about having spent $1 on a game. It takes a special kind of product for you to feel cheated after only having spent $1 on it. $1. I have no stake in any of this, and me personally, I haven't spent a dime on anything, so I'm not gonna go around throwing accusations or anything like that. Well, I guess I already did that, but it's too late to retract my statement, so I guess we're just gonna go with it. Still doesn't mean I have to like the game though. Fragrant Story, more like flagrant waste of my money. Okay, yeah, I'll just stop. I just had to make that joke, okay? I had to do it. So what is Fragrant Story? It's a grid-based tactical RPG, much akin to Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre. Although the systems are much more simplified because again, it's a 13-minute game. It's clear from the beginning that this isn't designed to last a full game's worth of content too. For one, the health system is very simplistic. Instead of having hard numbers, you have these heart containers. And whenever doing an action, including attacking, you must land this wheel on the outcome you want. If an enemy wants to do damage to you, the same thing happens. So if your character has 2 hearts and the enemy lands on a 1 heart damage attack, it takes 1 heart away from you. This would not at all be sustainable for a much longer game, but here it's fine. If you're good enough at spinning the wheel, you can get critical hits most of the time. It's so easy I could even accomplish this. Same goes for anything healing related. There are different classes, and you're able to pick from a series of party members with different movesets and abilities. I had a bit of fun with this, but its length did ruin that for me. I know there's extra content, but it's not really worth it. You actually have to grind for extra content, no I'm not joking, and the game isn't fleshed out enough for me to actually want to do these. I know tactics RPGs are pretty RNG based, but man, the wheel mechanic makes it so glaringly obvious. But that doesn't matter anyway because it's still super easy. The battle layouts themselves are lackluster and uninspired, and the story is a whole lot of nothing. Total of 4 cutscenes with barely anything being fleshed out, and since you pick your own party members, the actual party have no character traits or personality. A game like this could work in my opinion. It's already pretty arcadey in nature. I feel like they should have leaned on that. There are arcadey modes here, and if they were to be fleshed out, it could actually provide something worth $4. Right now though, there are just an infinitely better amount of tactical RPGs out there, all of them being longer than this too. Hell, some of the opening cutscenes for those games are probably longer than the entirety of Fragrant Story itself. 3 levels, no, I still can't get over that. Imagine paying $70 for this. Oh my gosh, that'd keep me up at night. I don't regret playing it. In fact, I don't feel anything playing it, just a nothing burger, but it's still pretty obscure and I like the art for it too. And the controversy around it is pretty funny. I kinda wanted to talk about it. There's actually a Switch release too. I don't know how it differs from the 3DS version though. At least the 3DS version supports 3D mode, so that's cool. Not enough later 3DS games do that. For Fragrant Story, I listened to nothing. Next game, come on, let's go, chop chop. Beat 'em ups are not my forte, and I couldn't tell you why, and the River City series are no exception to this. Okay, maybe a little bit of an exception, like a teeny tiny bit of an exception. They all look cool, and I actually have River City Girls, along with having played the NES River City Ransom, which is such a charming game by the way. I absolutely love the art and environments, but I've never actually played one for real, and why would I? Like I said, just not my thing. But I decided why not step out of my comfort zone and play an RPG themed River City game. It's in the same good old beat 'em up style as the original games, just with an RPG motif. Which, by the way, this isn't even really a traditional RPG. You're probably saying, well, duh. And number 1, wow, you're rude. Number 2, I mean in its progression. I thought there'd be levels and XP, but there's not. If I knew this, I wouldn't have tried it out for the video, in fact. But I'm actually glad I didn't realize this, because this game still belongs in the video just as much as the other stuff I put here. Despite not having typical level progression, it features all of the RPG tropes and systems we're familiar with, mixed with the River City gameplay style. There is a regular River City 3DS game in this same style, but this is the one I gravitated towards. First of all, aesthetics wise, both of these games look phenomenal. It does that 2D sprites with 3D environments thing I mentioned earlier, and being a side-scroller, it gives the world so much more depth. But it's not squirrely an aesthetic thing, as they use these 3D environments to create really cool looking arenas that allow you to maneuver in unique ways. But it's mainly aesthetic if I'm being honest, and cool as hell. It looks a little bit rough when you see it through the 3DS capture card, as you realize how low resolution so many of the 2D assets actually are. But trust, it looks so much better on the actual hardware, or the Citra emulator. As a River City game, moveset wise it seems to be pretty similar to most of them, although given that it has a medieval fantasy motif, the weapons you'll be using are obviously medieval inspired. They get pretty creative with these. I assigned my mage some magic weapons and got good use out of them. You can also recruit random party members from all over the world and build your team to your liking. I wouldn't call this open world as the progression is linear, but your choices as a player are very open. That includes all the quests you can take. So many NPCs have random things things to do. The quests do require a lot of backtracking, which wouldn't be a problem if the overworld didn't have random encounters. It's plenty manageable, but I kinda feel as though random encounters are excessive. There are plenty of side quests, and given that the only thing you can get for beating random encounters is money, it can be a bit of a slog because it can sometimes feel completely pointless to do these. Like you're just fighting the fight in service of nothing meaningful. But I get it, the whole RPG theme, they've got to insert all the tropey aspects of RPGs, even stuff like random encounters. It's a love letter to old school NES style RPGs now that I think about it. Its design reminds me of that. Older RPGs tended to have a lot of items, weapons, and consumables that most people would completely ignore because they never needed to use them. And this has exactly that, and the variety of choice is so cool, even if again, I completely neglected these. I could describe this as an RPG for people who don't like RPGs. If you do like RPGs, especially NES era ones, you'll have a great time with this. Building a strong team of adventurers is super satisfying, and providing them with weapons and equipment allows you to experiment to your liking. Since the very few type of beat 'em up games I've played have been balls hard, I expected this to be the same. But not at all, it was actually quite easy, which made experimenting pretty fun. It's a fun little romp despite not being super intuitive or complex. I recommend playing this while rewatching a show or listening to some music. Now me personally, I was listening to Jimi Hendrix for the first time actually. Love listening by the way, it was a great time. Oh yeah, I forgot about the story. Not notable at all, just like how most things are here. The story too harkens back to some NES RPGs. In the fact that it's pretty generic and disposable. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all NES RPGs are like that, just some in terms of story. But it doesn't have to be a crazy good story. It does what it needs to, and the dialogue itself is enjoyable. Anyway, we've been talking about all of these RPGs non-stop for a while. How about we take a bit of a detour? Let's head to an interlude. Oh yeah, along with Jimi Hendrix, I listened to some Beatles during this, specifically their last album, Let It Be, which was the last album I hadn't heard yet. I'm a huge Beatles fan by the way, they carried my junior year so hard. Walking home from work at 2 AM while listening to the White Album was just an experience I'll never get back. I have a few things on the agenda for today. First of all, I want to take a look at the promotional material for the games I've talked about so far, as I think those aren't talked about enough. 3DS promotional material is always super overlooked to the point where some of it is even lost media, and it's not for obscure games either. Some 3DS Dragon Quest games have lost media surrounding them. And Dragon Quest always has the best promotional material, and while Joker 3 isn't groundbreaking, it still has some cool stuff I want to mention. First of all, this animated intro. It has that low frame rate Spider-Verse type animation style, but it came out before Spider-Verse. I don't know the actual technical term for it, and I know I probably pissed off a few animators, but I'm just gonna call it that, and it looks cool. The Joker 3 site page also has a ton of gems I want to show you. It details stuff like promotional events with special material like this golden slime right here, and even more special monsters featuring callbacks to previous Joker games. Absolutely kick-ass art. The composition here is so amazing. I adore all the poses and angles. It also has its own blog page with tons of events and cool stuff that was happening at the time. The Dragon Quest developers have so much respect for their player base, and the constant events and community engagement makes the life cycles of these games feel like actual events. Which makes it hurt even more that number 1, I missed them, and number 2, I'm not in Japan so I couldn't see them anyway. Final Fantasy Explorers had some neat promo stuff too with character costumes from past games. It also had a collector's edition, pretty standard if I'm being honest, but still cool. Say what you want about Fragrant Story, but it had pretty good marketing by creating scarcity and bringing attention to itself. Plus, the Fragrant Story website is super cool. It features this creative live-action promo, and the art for the whole thing is so well made. Persona Q has a surprising amount of promotional material made for it. I mean, it is a Persona game after all. You knew they're going to go crazy with the art. I said this before, but I can't stress this enough. The art style is absolutely perfect. I love it so much. It also has a snazzy special edition coming with cards, a CD, an art book, all that jazz. I also wasn't going to talk about trailers because that's boring, but man, this announcement trailer is snazzy. I also find it really funny how the trailer for River City Knights of Justice posted by the official Natsume account didn't even break 10k views. It doesn't help that the promotional images are grainier than a beach. That's enough about promo stuff. However, the interlude isn't over yet. I wanted to take time away to talk about some me RPGs because I think they fit here. Not only Miitopia, but a Street Pass game. Let's start with the Street Pass game as it's a smaller endeavor. There are quite a few Street Pass games that I could consider RPGs, but you guys know how much I love fishing, and I can't pass up the fishing game, man, no matter what. So you already know I'm talking about it. And I never would have considered Ultimate Angler an RPG until I thought about it for this video, and yeah, it kinda is. The progression is basically that. It is a fishing RPG, which explains why it's probably one of my favorite fishing games ever. Not only do I have this huge bias for Mii's and 3DS games, I love RPG progression and I love fishing. Literally the perfect product right here. It's like the stars aligned. It's meant to be a small sub-game in the Street Pass software, but it's basically its own thing at this point. Here, you meet other players who give you bait, and you can go fishing with them. You can also hire dogs to go with you as well. There's not much of a difference between dogs and human players. I like this because other Street Pass games are practically unplayable without meeting real people regularly, and even then it can be a stretch. Although, one thing makes human players much more valuable than dog players under certain circumstances. There are these things called silver permits which only appear when you street pass someone outside your state or province, and gold permits which you can only get when you street pass with somebody internationally. Both of these are ridiculously impractical to get, especially in America. I know this was likely designed with Japan in mind, so maybe some kid in 2016 living in the middle of Tokyo had a different experience from me. But I find it extremely impractical to find real life people consistently enough to even go fishing regularly, let alone get these special permits, so rip to anyone who lives in the middle of nowhere or in a country where no one owned a 3DS. Since I use NetPass, I get one of these every single time, but man, it must have felt so special getting one of these legit. By the way, I use NetPass, which is a special software that allows you to street pass other real people without the laborious task of stepping outside. God forbid you get some sun, that thing causes cancer. I use the gold permits almost every time because the fishing spots there are the best. They're absolutely stunning and have such good fish that give so much gold and XP. I played the hell out of this back in senior year of high school, and this is my first time booting it up since then. I was gonna play for like 20 minutes to get footage, but I got kinda lost in the sauce and ended up playing for too long to the point where I unlocked a bunch of new stuff. Fishing itself is really fun, especially the larger fish, which can be genuinely so hectic to catch. There are different kinds of bait street passers will give you, and each fish takes different kinds of baits. These big ass fish that I mentioned will be the main thing you're aiming for, and you must have the right bait to catch them. To reel them up, you need to fill out this gauge, but there's a time limit, so you must be fast with it. You also have to make sure your line doesn't break, so you can't just constantly reel non-stop. It's essentially a boss battle trying to reel these guys in. When getting them, all your other Miis help you reel and tire out the aquatic beast. I have absolutely overpowered equipment, so it's not too hard, but even then it's so fun and still gets nerve-wracking at points. You can also catch garbage, which is less satisfying. In fact, it's ass and a waste of time. I want to talk about these environments though. I know I have and will continue to gush about the visuals for some of these games, but just know this is easily the best looking game out of all of them. I'm biased, I love beaches, I love water, I love rain. Okay, you got me. Don't care, still looks genuinely stunning. It's so atmospheric too, the music complements it so well. Senior year was quite stressful for me, and playing this before bed every day was really therapeutic. I think it saved me from a few mental breakdowns actually, but looking back, senior year was a fucking cakewalk. Actual lightweight stuff right there. Actual skill issue, old Pixar. Pull yourself up from your bootstraps, come on man. There are also these events called fishing frenzies, which allow you to catch a crap ton of fish and get a crap ton of XP and gold. Outside of fishing activities, you can upgrade and buy new rods, as well as maintain tanks to showcase the fish you've caught. There are also quite a few challenge missions you can achieve as you play the game. Most of these you will unlock just through natural progression. And I know I keep saying this, but the aesthetic for this is so legendary. The fish look so good. Their models are so satisfying to look at. Like, why do these fish look so good for no reason? There's no reason for it. It just makes me want to whip out the grill and go ham. Or in this case, go fish. Double entendre. Yeah, no. You can unsubscribe now, I'm so sorry. If you want to see me go into slightly more detail about this, which you probably don't care actually, go watch my Street Pass video from a bit ago. I released that during the senior struggle period, and man, you can tell. Can't believe that was a year ago, what the hell. Miitopia is the second game I wanted to talk about. I kinda was going to remove it from the video because 1, it isn't even that obscure, and 2, I didn't think it'd be as interesting to talk about as it is. I know for people who don't have the same emotional attachment to this game as I do, it's not a crazy interesting topic, so I won't talk about it endlessly, but it might be more interesting than you think it is. I think I could convince you to try it out because after having not played it in 6 years, I was more than pleasantly surprised. I first played Miitopia back in elementary school 9 years ago, and in that 9 years I haven't beat it. I've played it plenty of times but never beat it, don't even think I've gotten close. Miitopia by all means is not at all obscure as it had a Switch release that was wildly popular. That makeup thing was absolutely genius, especially from a marketing perspective. Back when Twitter wasn't as much of a cesspool, it was a huge thing in the art community. The makeup thing not only made the 3DS version obsolete, it completely redirected all attention away from it, to the point where some people don't even know there's a 3DS version. Also, given that Miitopia came out a month before the Switch was released, it was never even that popular in the first place. I always forget how not recognized this game is, especially since it was such a huge piece of my life at one point. Same with Animal Crossing New Leaf. That game is by no means obscure either, but I'll be damned if I meet an Animal Crossing New Leaf player in the wild. Miitopia also targeted a relatively specific audience of kids who liked playing around with Miis, and I can imagine not a lot of adults actually wanted to check this thing out when it first released. And again, I actually didn't think I'd enjoy replaying it as much as I did now that I am an adult. It always felt like the modern equivalent of a kid playing with dolls, but just more intuitive, and I thought I kinda grew out of it, but I guess I didn't. Maybe there was nothing to even grow out of in the first place. Going back as a huge RPG fan makes it feel so quaint because it's clearly meant to be a gateway RPG for kids who don't play those types of games. It's good for you if you want to fulfill a power fantasy and see how far you can take this game as someone familiar with RPGs. You can min-max stats here with food, which will give them subtle but vital stat raises. You can also optimize stuff like friendships, personality, and job combinations, and even extra XP allocation. Again, great power fantasy. The whole Mii thing is lovely, by the way. With makeup, it's vastly improved in the Switch version, but I think there's an art in creating accurate looking Miis of fictional characters with the limitations of the Mii maker. Since my last video was about Earthbound, I decided to go with an Earthbound theming here and create an Earthbound cast of characters. Also, this is how I sadly found out that Spot Pass is no longer a thing. My dumbass never really understood what Spot Pass even was. But I know it randomly generated user Miis into the world as NPCs. Without Spot Pass, they're just generic humans, so that sucks. People often say that Miitopia is a great game that doesn't know how to end, and I completely agree with that. It is surprisingly long, especially for what it is. I said earlier I've replayed this countless times and never beat it, and I mean that. I had the tendency to not finish games back then, but I don't even blame myself for not completing this one in particular. If you're already not super intrigued but still want to check it out, I'd go in with the expectation of playing it until you get bored of it. And since the game itself is quite linear progression-wise, it can make some parts of the game feel glacial. Miitopia also isn't a traditional RPG combat-wise. I've said this for every game now at this point. Nothing is like a traditional RPG combat-wise. But for real, here the only party member you can control is yourself, so it's much more of a team manager. It's a cool game and play it if you want. It's cozy and charming. Also, the modding community on the 3DS for this is so underrated. The Big Chungus mod was just as well known as the entire game itself at one time. It's still crazy to me how someone from 1941 could have been laughing at Big Chungus, and 70 years later I was laughing at it as a kid too. Miitopia but harder is another mod from quite a bit ago that I remember. I was never invested enough in it to try it out, but it's such a cool thing. It's an absolutely, and I mean absolutely balls hard version of the game that I have the foresight to never touch once in my life for as long as I live. The mod also has a Switch remake, so if you're invested but don't have a 3DS, who am I kidding? You don't care. Let's move on already. Before we go back to 3DS RPGs, I want to detail a little bit of something to you guys. So as you guys know, I'm in college now, and I played a lot of these while in college. It's certainly been a roller coaster, and these 3DS RPGs provide me with some much needed normalcy in what has been so far the most eventful period of my life. I'm telling you, sometimes it's just non-stop action. I'm doing stuff 24/7, barely get any sleep, and I look at my calendar app thinking it's been a month. I look at it, it's been 3 fucking days. I had entire weeks where I would do nothing but study all day every day. I mean, wake up at 6 a.m. and then go to bed at like midnight just studying the entire time. In other weeks, I would do nothing but party all day every day non-stop. It's been so disorienting in a good type of way. I wrote all of this script over winter break where I am now home, which has provided me with much needed relief from the constant action of living on campus. But man, being back home kind of made me realize how important these games were to me while I was playing. Going from the city back to the slow-paced vanilla suburbs has had life moving like it's in slow motion. Playing these RPGs as a form of escapism works so well after a day of going to events and doing work, but not so much in a neighborhood where nothing is actually going on. I have a really lively community, which I am super thankful for, but mostly it's just like little kids outside or middle-aged dudes with mortgages and all that, and I'm not really fitting with any of those, so I'm just kinda stuck. The nature of the 3DS being this RPG powerhouse that only exists on this tiny device is such an underrated aspect of it. Compared to console and PC games, it feels like there's an extra level of disconnect from the real world. It's a new layer of escapism for me, so let us escape into even more cozy and obscure 3DS RPGs, shall we? Interlude over. Monster Hunter Stories is another 3DS RPG that got a Switch remaster, but unlike Miitopia where a remaster revitalized the game, it did not occur for this. There's Monster Hunter Stories 2, which I know nothing about and is actually more popular than the first game. I also think the second game is uglier than the first one. This isn't me being biased towards the 3DS even. The stylization of the environment isn't there anymore. It feels so weird having the surroundings of the characters not at all fit the art style. But it looks like the first game releasing months before the Switch was announced killed any potential momentum it could have had. And even with the remaster, it just didn't prove to be enough. Was that for a reason? I know I keep saying this and I promise this is the last time I'll say it, but gosh, this game is gorgeous. Sometimes. I will say the 3DS version doesn't have the greatest performance at points. If you see any frame rate drops or stuttering, that's not my footage, that's actually just how the game runs. I even watched other YouTubers play it because I was scared it was my own console underperforming, but no, that's just how the game is optimized, I guess. We start the game in this peaceful monster trial before everything goes south and this absolute unit of a beast destroys everything. The game takes place a year later and you carry on your duties, although your friend who lost his mother in the attack is much more cynical, viewing monsters as a threat, something to be killed rather than tamed. Which, by the way, I've never played a Monster Hunter. I know the whole point of Monster Hunter is to, let me check my notes again. It's a monster hunting game. I thought that was about farming or something. They phrase monster taming in this spinoff as if it's an unorthodox thing in the universe, so tell me in the comments if the Monster Hunter series, like the mainline games, have monster taming, cause I don't really know. But here, instead of defeating big monsters, which is something you still do, you actually more so prioritize stealing their offspring. There are these caves where you can snatch eggs and take them home. There are different dens, regular dens, rare dens, and for some reason, I couldn't tell you why, my actual dumbass walked past a rare den, knowing full well it was there, by the way. I even stopped to look at it. I mean, come on. Who in their right mind sees a golden cave and walks right past the thing? You guys couldn't see my face, but when I came back and found out it wasn't there, my face was the most disappointed it could have been in that moment. I luckily found another one not too later on and stole the hell out of that egg, but I got unlucky and got a pretty basic monster with like slightly better stats. The monsters are cool to have tamed though. I call the big one Bitey. Battles see you and your monster partner up, attacking the enemy in a sort of rock, paper, scissors type dynamic. It's rather simple and I can see it getting a bit unsatisfying after a certain point, but I never hit that point myself. The battle choreography is also phenomenal here, especially the special effects, which have great animations. With all the effects, even the most simple battles feel satisfying and cinematic. Same with cutscenes, the important ones all look good. Normally though, it's just two characters talking back and forth, and it throws me off so bad because they just stand there completely still and maybe blink occasionally. It's so funny how they're completely immobile. It reminds me of that one Simpsons joke where they just forgot to animate Grandpa's body for some reason. Yeah, sorry, if you didn't notice, the past few videos I've been making a lot of Simpsons jokes and using clips from the show. Since November, I've binge watched classic Simpsons 3 times. I love the show. Season 4 is the best season of television ever made. Fight me. I won't fight you if you say any other classic season though, because that's valid. On a final note, this game has fishing. Any RPG with fishing is good in my book. Anyways, great game that you should check out if it sounds interesting, and I'm going to stop because 3 hours of footage for some reason took up 10 gigabytes of space on my computer. Here, I listen to Pet Sounds, an album so addictive it should be illegal to listen to. I also listen to a few other Beach Boys albums I haven't heard yet. Their 60s and early 70s music is ethereal. Their album Friends is so good. If you don't even like Beach Boys, I suggest listening to it because it's only 20 minutes, and if you're not sold on it after that, then I don't think you have a soul. Puyo Chronicle. The funny thing about a lot of these 3DS RPGs that I've talked about so far is that despite them coming from popular well-known series, the RPGs themselves are pretty unknown, whether they be forgotten or just become obscure from the get-go. And Puyo is a series I have absolutely no knowledge of. In fact, it's a spin-off of the Mado Monogatari series. I say this like it's some crazy revelation, but I don't know, maybe you already knew that, viewer. If you don't know what the Mado Monogatari series is, it's this collection of cute as hell RPGs featuring this little girl named Arl. Gameplay varies from game to game. Sometimes it's a dungeon crawler, other times it's a traditional turn-based RPG. I remember seeing a Puyo block as an enemy in the SNES game, thinking it was a cute Easter egg, not knowing the games were actually connected. And to be honest with you guys, this is my first ever Puyo game. In fact, probably my first game of this type ever. Don't get me wrong, I like stuff like Tetris and fucking Wario's Woods, but those are more of a you have 20 minutes before you have to go somewhere and need to kill time type games. Or I would play Tetris in class when I had nothing else to do. I was a beast at Tetris. I impressed so many people in class. But yeah, my gameplay here might be so frustrating to you veterans. I know you guys don't play about your little blobby block guys. This is also another Japan-only game, which explains why you've probably never heard of it if you're not tapped into the series as a whole. My biggest interest when jumping into it is to see how they would do the combat, and oh boy, I don't know if I was overwhelmed or underwhelmed. It did the exact thing I expected it to, yet it still really caught me off guard. Okay, so the combat will see you engage with an enemy, and to beat them, you need to clear these blobs, just like in a normal Puyo session. Connecting blobs does damage or heals you depending on what you connect, and enemies can retaliate by filling your box with absolute BS. There are different characters with different stats as well as abilities. The abilities will help you quite well if you're stuck in a rut or you just want to get an encounter over with. You would think the combat gets repetitive since you're playing Puyo every single battle, and to be honest, it sorta does. The thing is, I could acknowledge it's repetitive without feeling the emotions that comes with that. It didn't at all feel monotonous, and this can relate back to 3 things. 1. Either I am so addicted to Puyo that constantly connecting these blobs doesn't bother me whatsoever, very likely. 2. In regular battles, you don't need to play optimally. I got very sloppy at certain points with no repercussions. Or 3. I forgot what I was gonna say. Let's pick one of the other 2 and just forget this ever happened, okay? The best thing about this is the fact that enemies are shown in the overworld, meaning no random encounters, plus they're very avoidable. Once I stopped feeling like battling, I just ran past these dudes. There are also items you can equip that give you stat raises. You can acquire these naturally or buy them. And you can fuse them too, since only 4 are equipable at a time. Let me also note that there are side quests. I always love myself some good side quests. That's one thing about playing traditional RPGs, is that side quests are not always present in the same way they are in modern RPGs. Sometimes side quests in older RPGs are harder than the actual main story. Here, it's rather simple stuff, with backtracking or new slightly harder but manageable areas. The actual story is alright, but still very charming due to the character designs and some of their dialogue. If it looks like I'm skipping dialogue, I'm not. It's just I've read a lifetime's worth of 3DS RPG dialogue already. I've become an expert at speed reading since there is so much filler, oh my gosh. That's not a complaint with this game. The dialogue is pretty disposable, but not absolute schlock. Okay, yeah, sorry, I was getting heated thinking of another game. I'll talk about it later, don't worry. The story features our girl Aro, the girl from the Mado Monogatari series, who gets sucked into a book world and must escape. Everything else that happens is mainly fluff, and to be honest, I was more invested in the gameplay than I was the actual story. I like the characters though, they're all sweet and nice to see once in a while. Aside from the traditional RPG parts, there is actually more content not RPG related. I was going to only play the RPG parts, but I thought, screw it, I'ma play it anyway, and I'm going to like it. And I did. Here's everything I have to show you. This is Pixa's Puyo project, name still pending. One thing that makes this game worth it alone is the fact that it has so much extra content, basically enough to ignore the main RPG game for tens of hours. I'll tell you what game modes I played in order. Block mode is like regular Puyo Puyo, except there are these impenetrable blocks you must navigate around. I got a lot of enjoyment out of this one. It was fun trying to maneuver around the obstacles. The CPU is monstrously bad at this, but I am also monstrously bad, so it evens out. There's Big Bang mode where you must clear preset Puyo Puyo patterns faster than the other person, and unlike the CPU, this time I am monstrously bad, and they aren't. In fact, for my first few sessions, I had no idea what was going on. Even though it's a 100% complete and utter skill issue, I still shrug it off compared to the other modes. Mini Excavation sees you going through this ocean of blobs to eventually uncover the star before your opponent does. It's pretty much a race mode, and a very fun one at that if you get the star first. Your opponent's screen will be absolutely bombarded, and it's so hilarious to watch. I've sealed this person's fate and take joy in watching them scramble out of it. There's Big Puyo Puyo, or Mega Puyo, where you must connect these large blobs, but instead of needing to connect 4 blobs, only 3 are required. A lot of the wasteful things you can get away with in regular Puyo Puyo doesn't exist here to the same extent. You need to be meticulous and calculated, not to a crazy extent, but it's still good to be aware. I am shockingly sloppy at this. I can't even selectively use footage that makes me look good, because I don't think I look good for even an instant. There's regular Puyo Puyo and Puyo Puyo 2. 2 has these purple blocks, but by the way, you can play up against 3 other opponents, and this gets extremely hectic, especially on other game modes. Puyo Puyo Sun sees you messing with these sun blobs. They can be helpful but also hurt you if you don't utilize them correctly. The right use of Sun Puyo can absolutely decimate the other opponent, or in most cases decimates me. In Mission Puyo, you must complete a set of missions the fastest, such as getting a chain of 5 blobs or knocking out a certain type of blob. You're competing to get these missions done faster than your opponent rather than trying to knock them out. There are more modes, 18 in total actually, but I'm going to end my little Puyo project here. It's been a fun ride. Now I must ride off into the sunset. This is the end of Pixa's Puyo project. Definitely forever. Not even probably. Definitely. I 100% recommend Puyo Puyo Chronicles. It was very fun to reflect on, despite how much I've said Puyo Puyo. It doesn't even feel like a real word anymore. Well, it's not a real word anyway, unless it is, but I'm a filthy American. Pick it up for yourself. If not for the main RPG campaign, then go for all the cool side modes available to you. It is very good. For this, I was listening to War, that funk group. I had no idea they made that Lowrider song or the Why Can't We Be Friends song. I've been singing Why Can't We Be Friends forever, and I had no idea it came from these guys. The music video for the Lowrider song slaps too. I love those 70s cars. Xenoblade on the 3DS is a game I would call more forgotten than it is obscure. It's absolutely been overshadowed, even when it was still relevant, which I kinda find hilarious. Then the Switch release came along and poor Xenoblade 3DS, you never stood a chance. I've always viewed the 3DS port as a novelty, to be honest. There was never a time in my life where I sat down and said, I'm going to beat the entirety of Xenoblade on my fucking 3DS. I'm sorry, that literally never crossed my mind. Even me, a seasoned 3DS enjoyer, I never took it that seriously. As a novelty, it's super impressive and I love it, but I couldn't see myself putting more than 30 hours into this max. 15, definitely. 20, that's pushing it, but it's doable. Over 30, hell nah. Like I said, as a novelty, it's one of my favorite 3DS games, the entirety of a Wii RPG on this little console. But it's clear the game wasn't designed with that in mind. Don't get me wrong, it's more than playable. They did the best they could, and it's great. The visuals weren't redone to accommodate the 3DS and its low resolution, so it looks like a pixelated mess. And with all the effects going around, it is so hard to comprehend what is going on sometimes. It's already hard enough to do that in the other versions. And the frame rate can get choppy at points too. Not as much as you would think though, but it still happens. I don't know whether I want to label these as criticisms since it never bothered me and I didn't even take it into account until years later now that I am making this video. But I thought to mention it because that might be a deal breaker for other people who aren't me. I booted up my old save and played for a bit and I couldn't stop thinking, man, how did I play so many hours of this? This is also my second save, so I'm not as far in as I used to be. My old 3DS is gone and that had all my old games and save data on it. Despite what I said earlier, there are points where I do think to myself, man, this game is pretty, in my own twisted 3DS obsessed way. But I wouldn't try to convince anyone to play this. Again, even though it's super cool and a ton of effort was put into it, I can't help but play it as more of a novelty. Kinda like Mario Galaxy DS or Super Mario Star Road for the 3DS. But it's still cool and I like running around in it. Check it out, but don't buy it if it's your only option. It's almost $60 now. Just buy the Switch version at that point. Or even better, play the Wii version on your computer or something. For Xenoblade, I listened to TV Girl, some of their old stuff along with the new collab album I never got around to listening to. The Denpa Men! A very nostalgic little game for me right here, and not even due to the fact that I played it as a kid. One of my earliest videos was this YouTube short talking about Denpa Men. I remember waking up at 4 AM that morning working on it, and I barely got it done before my bus came at 6 AM. The title was some clickbait nonsense, Pikmin had an RPG ? Yeah, sure buddy. But it's nostalgic, I don't know, 400 views seemed so exciting back then. Also the editing sucks, I love it. Despite me poking fun at the title of that short, it's not too far off of a description really. It does remind me a lot of Pikmin in both its aesthetic and gameplay style. First off, you must catch these Denpa Men with your 3DS camera. This released in 2012, so they cared more about using the mechanics of the 3DS than later devs did. It's a novelty, but unlike some other gimmicky type games, it's not really that intrusive. Catching them with the camera isn't difficult, and you won't be doing it too much anyway. Different colors of Denpa Men have different weaknesses. Some will even have antennas on their head, indicating they have some sort of magic power. These are the ones you'll be wanting most, as magic powers will prove to be very useful. You sort a team of Denpa Men through this meme maker looking ass room. That's another thing. This game, despite not being made by Nintendo, has that late 2000s, early 2010s Nintendo charm to it. That time period had a really distinct aesthetic that died when the Switch released. I really do miss the Wii U era sometimes. It had so much more personality, it's just absolutely unmatched. I miss Miiverse. I got distracted while writing this and I went down memory lane. Oh my gosh, I miss it. The music was so good. But yeah, they definitely tried and succeeded at replicating that charm here, and I wouldn't blame you if you thought this was an official Nintendo release. The main gameplay loop here is you dungeon crawling with these little guys and clearing dungeons together. The more dungeons you beat, the bigger your army gets, and you'll have a decently large party soon enough. It's recommended to use auto battle, as individually controlling that many party members every turn is not realistic. Furthermore, since you have so many party members, you will be able to bum rush enemies and absolutely decimate them. But unlike Pikmin however, your Denpa Men aren't completely disposable. I mean, they can be to an extent, but if you lose one, it can be frustrating, especially if you lose a good one. You can also give them equipables, which will strengthen them and boost certain stats. I also love how much personality each Denpa Man has. They will have a distinct look to them that can make them either look cute or goofy. I love this guy. He's so cute and a valuable asset to the team. You go, little man. The dungeon crawling is rather simple. There are alternate routes, but there aren't really any puzzles or super crazy obstacles. Enemies are the main focus, in fact. It's very elementary in a nostalgic type of way. Simpler times, you know? The official promo for the game is so good too. 13 years ago, and it definitely feels that way. It's damn strange in a way that doesn't exist anymore, if you get what I mean. And I'm very glad a new Denpa Men released on Switch. I haven't played it, but I assume it's good because it's Denpa Men. So now we have 4 of these games, the first 3 on the 3DS, and now a Switch release. The other 2 3DS releases are much more fleshed out it seems, and I'm very excited to get to them. It looks like more of the same, but better. For Denpa Men, I listened to Magdalena Bay, a very 80s sounding duo. Please listen to Imaginal Disc, it was the best album of 2024, no contest. Also, I was gonna go to their concert for my birthday, but I got violently sick literally right before I was set to go, and I'll never forgive my body for doing that to me. And it was an album tour too, and they're probably never gonna do that again. I wanna cry thinking about it, man. I can't take it anymore. Next game. I gotta resist the urge to mention how beautiful Yokai Watch looks at points. And now I can't resist it anymore. This thing is gorgeous. Alright, I had to get it out of my system. We can continue now. I am now realizing how much more personal this video has been compared to my other cozy obscure games videos. It's mainly because these games and IPs I have actually grown up with, so I have a lot to say regarding my personal experiences. In fact, the production of this video felt like one giant nostalgia trip. It's fun, but very painful sometimes, and will only get worse as I age. Fantastic. As a kid, I was always a dirty contrarian, just like how I am now. I didn't like Fortnite, I didn't like a ton of popular songs, and I didn't like Pokemon Go. I was a Yokai Watch kid, and seeing the downfall of Yokai Watch in real time was so devastating to me. You'd see this game in the bargain bin at stores, or even in dollar stores, and they didn't have the dignity to shelve them right too. Those things were plopped on the counter left to rot and nobody bought them, not even me. In hindsight, I wish I did, because you don't find them in stores anymore, and on Amazon, they're regularly priced at best. But I hadn't played the game until around 2021 or so. I watched the show instead, in fact. It was my first ever anime, and it blew my mind. It used to play on Disney XD, and I'd watch it every school night. Back then, I had no idea anime was Japanese, and I was shocked by how leagues ahead of other shows it was at the time. I stopped watching around season 3, and that was when the show was dying anyway. These IMDb ratings are fucking hilarious, man. So many of these episodes are rated more highly than The Godfather Part 2. Why? What? Since I've seen the show, a lot of the story in the game is familiar to me. They did a fantastic job at adapting it from what I'm seeing. The story in the game itself is really well conveyed. It does feel like you're playing a show to an extent, and I'm always surprised that as early as 2014, Yokai Watch was kinda outdoing Pokemon story-wise. By the way, I eventually stopped being a dirty contrarian in regards to Pokemon, so don't take this as me blindly hating on the games. I actually like all the 3DS Pokemon games, just story-wise they don't compare, especially not X and Y. And other than the monster collecting thing, I don't even want to compare Yokai Watch to Pokemon because it's so tired and boring. And also, they don't actually bear that much resemblance to each other in terms of gameplay. People just saw monster collecting and ran with it being a Pokemon ripoff. If you wanted to rage bait me as a kid, just say that Yokai Watch is a Pokemon ripoff. That would send me into a blind rage. I was treated like not a second-class citizen, not even a third-class citizen. I was treated like a fourth-class citizen just for liking Yokai Watch. You go around helping people with their mostly yokai-related problems, which for those of you unfamiliar, yokai are these supernatural creatures that will influence the people around them, and different yokai have different effects. Like Dismeralda, who disturbs the emotional environment and causes people to have arguments. Or her husband, who mends relationships through healthy communication. Perfect couple. Sometimes you have to engage them in battle, and it has this auto battle type system where the only input the player has is activating special attacks. There are also party lines, meaning you can scroll through different party members during battle. So you actually have 6 party members, with 3 fighting at a time. One thing I love about Yokai Watch that I find to be absent in other monster tamers is the memorability of the monsters. I think it's one of the best original IPs at this. An issue I have with a lot of monster tamers is how unmemorable the monsters themselves can be, as I said earlier. Here, it's pretty damn perfect. They have unique designs that I remember distinctly over a decade later, and the fact that they're not a bore design-wise incentivizes me to add them to my team. The explorable world is definitely my favorite aspect of the game. It's surprisingly fleshed out, the layout is great, and I'm assuming it's based on how actual Japanese cities are laid out. I know nothing about city planning in Japan, so I might be entirely wrong, but if towns are designed like this in real life, that's amazing. Way better than here, where in most areas, if you don't have a car, you're just condemned to isolation. I used to think I was a homebody before moving to college, but no, it's just there was nowhere to go. I couldn't walk anywhere. There is a ton to look at, and it's so dense. Every corner has something to do and someone to talk to. And don't say it. Don't say it. Okay, yeah, this game is gorgeous. For an early 3DS game, it holds a candle to a lot of the stuff introduced later on. The nature environments are especially pretty. The art style does a lot to complement this aesthetic though. It's all amazing. And since we're on the topic of monster tamers, I think we should go on to another monster taming game. The 3DS had a weird affinity for monster taming stuff, but I can dig it. Oh, yeah, and music. I listen to Cream. I listen to a lot of Cream. That is some good stuff. Am I the target audience for Moco friends? Definitely not, which is why I'm going to keep this a little footnote in the video. Moco Friends is a cute little monster tamer made for 6-year-olds, and here I am at 19 reviewing it at the same standard I would review something like Radiant Historia. This thing has a lot of dialogue, genuinely so much, it's staggering. This is what I was getting mad about earlier. I know it's a little kid's game, but why? There was no need for this much dialogue, and it's mostly fluff that I don't even think kids would be interested in. I wouldn't. What little girl wants to hear like 5 minutes of two people talking? They want to see some cute monsters. I haven't fully outlined this yet, but the 3DS had a problem where some of its games would over-explain everything, and even as a kid I found it monotonous. You know how people complain about Pokemon dialogue and tutorials nowadays? Well, I'm completely blind to that, because I had to deal with stuff like this for my entire childhood. And I'm not at all averse to reading. In my personal life, I read a ton. I'm currently reading The Dirt right now, the Motley Crue autobiography. Great book, by the way. It's so charming and fast-paced, but it's also really screwed up. Check it out if you want to read about constant dysfunction. It'll give you that. I think you see through my gameplay here how impatient I was getting with the dialogue. I usually never skip dialogue, but here I just had to. The gameplay only further solidified the fact that this is a baby game. I had fun with it, but it is piss easy. The designs are exceedingly cute, and it makes me feel bad whenever I decimate them in battle. The dungeons can be vanilla, nothing much here other than random encounters. Guys, this thing is for 6-year-olds. I don't feel right talking about it like this. It's also a Japan-only game, and we never got this. An adult can have fun with it, but you have to be really immersed and also really love these types of games. If it interests you, check it out. I had a relative amount of fun with it. It was a whiplash playing this while listening to Rather Be a Hustler by New Breed of Hustlers, an obscure early 90s West Coast rap album. It's such an addictive listen. This was before G-Funk entirely took over, and it's what you call mob music, which pretty much faded into obscurity by the mid-90s. It used a lot of synths and 70s funk samples. Alliance Alive surprised me because it's a 3DS RPG that acts like it's some AAA console game. I love its ambition. The art direction is absolutely fantastic. It has this watercolor thing going on with darker, dull colors, not looking bland however. It fits the world and setting. That feeling of isolation is very real and is only further emphasized by the art style. You're probably wondering why it's constantly raining. Actually, no, you don't care, but I'll explain because it does have importance and you'll eventually care once I do. It follows this group of characters who act as a resistance against this race of animal-like creatures who treat humans as if they're inferior. It's rumored that beyond these large walls is where undesirable humans are held, but we don't know what's past it. This wall also contributes to the horrible climate we see now, constant rain in this area which is not good at all for us. I love rain, but even I have my limits. They do a really good job of making everything feel hopeless. From your first real mission, you're given a reality check and told how unimportant you are in this world. After that, you continually take L's, like you've already been humbled and the game just insists on humbling you even more until your confidence is decimated. Even as a player, you'll get humbled through your gameplay. It happened to me, and I was not very happy about it. It lures you in and crushes all of your confidence just for the sake of it. I also think the combat in Alliance Alive is the most unique out of any game in this video. It follows a combination of things, but what it resembles most to me is Romancing Saga 3. Each stat levels up individually after each battle, with even weapons leveling up. Just like in Romancing Saga 3, you can also unlock moves while in battle through simply using your weapon consistently enough. There are skill points you can allocate to your characters that gives them different passive or active abilities, although accumulating points takes quite a bit of time, so be careful with what you spend. I should mention the fast forward feature in this. I never noted it, but a lot of these had a fast forward feature. It was quite a culture shock because before or after this, it wasn't a common thing, apart from re-releases of games perceived to be archaic. I don't know why the trend became so prevalent here and never quite stuck around for original games afterwards, but I appreciate it. Especially here, where you'll be getting into a lot of seemingly useless battles. Once again, I adore how much effort this thing puts into crafting a whole experience despite being on the 3DS. Sometimes I get the feeling that devs treat the 3DS as lesser than it really is when it comes to RPGs, and the devs here did not at all let anything stop them from telling the narrative that they wanted to, and I find that so admirable. In fact, out of almost everything I played, I like this story for this one the most. Near the beginning, it's super character focused, and they're quickly able to reel you in. Speaking of reeling though, fishing is not in this game, but you know what reminds me of fishing? Water. And water in Alliance Alive is extremely dangerous. These aquatic beasts will try to snatch you up, and guaranteed they will beat your ass even if you are prepared. Don't try your luck like I did. Also, as for a surprising amount of these entries, this also has a Switch port, so play that if you're interested. But once again, it's clear the art style was made for the 3DS and not meant to be seen in HD, but it's not by any means ugly. A very interesting and lovable game that you should hop into right the heck now. I think for this one, I listened to the zombies. I'm pretty sure I did. I don't know. I was actually really engulfed in this, so I can't remember what I listened to. I want to end this video on a high note, and what better game to do that with than Fantasy Life? Oh, Fantasy Life for the 3DS, how I adore you. So a little caveat before I actually talk about the game, my old save completely vanished and I have no idea why. I literally own the game physically, but for some reason on this new 3DS, my save didn't carry over, and boy do I not have the old one. And for some reason, this is the only physical game it did this with. All the other ones, the saves are just completely fine for some reason. I'm totally not salty about that, man. Definitely. Don't be too confused if I talk about certain things and it doesn't line up with my footage. I did the best I could. I had to replay the entire thing from scratch just for this, but I'm not too mad because it was fun. So, where do I even start? Oh yeah, the Switch release of Fantasy Life. Never played it. It was a fantastic surprise, however, but I'm not going to pretend that I'm eventually going to play it though, because I don't think I have the time for that. But maybe in like 30 years, I'll enjoy it, who knows. If I played it now, it would absolutely murder my schedule and my time. Dude, I so much need to get done. I don't need this series ruining my life again. Fantasy Life is like a drug, a really, really good one that makes you feel happy and productive, and that's what's so dangerous about it. You'll spend days in bed knowing you have responsibilities, but you don't get that feeling of stress because you're too busy accomplishing stuff in the game. There are constant objectives to get done, and you better do them. Of course, there's a job system. I mean, it's the main selling point of the game. The literal trailer of the game has the slogan, "Get a life." It's really harsh marketing, but it gets the point across. I definitely do need to get a life. And what better way to do that than in a fantasy 3DS game? The different jobs all play a unique role in how you traverse the world. Some help you extract materials, others let you create materials, and best of all, it'll help you fight. All three of these job types work in tandem with each other to create a grindy but extremely satisfying gameplay loop. Each job has a set of missions you can complete to improve your rank, allowing you to unlock certain cool new things. The whole thing opens up quite slowly if I'm being honest, and I think that's part of the charm. Life is fast paced, but at the same time, it can feel like your actual progress is glacial. There will be a lot of crafting, a lot of foraging, mining, fishing, cutting, poaching, cooking, and you're going to like it. It, in fact, can be very disorienting, and I won't lie, it can end up being repetitive. I wouldn't call Fantasy Life super grindy, but it's pretty damn grindy. It's less about doing the same thing over and over again, and more so doing different small quests to slowly but surely make progress toward a larger goal. Progression is extremely satisfying, as basically everything in this game contributes to some sort of progression bar in some way. It can help you unlock stuff like new recipes, areas, abilities, and even pets. My dog is the best, dude. He carries all of my battles. You'll see it in my gameplay. There's going to be quite a bit of traveling, and it helps that collecting resources is so satisfying. I have to physically stop myself from stopping at every second to collect a resource or fight an enemy, especially the fishing. I have an absolute weakness for fishing. If I didn't restrain myself, I guarantee to you that over half of my footage will just include me fishing. Housing is pretty overlooked for me. Even in my old save, it was always neglected. I never decorated. I love interior decorating and stuff like Animal Crossing, but here, you'll literally never be at home ever. I never bothered with this ever, but I know there are different properties you can buy in different places. These life sims are always so inspiring in the fact that I could be this dude constantly hustling, working his ass off for a better future, no sleep schedule, my man is running on hopes and dreams. Around the world, there are these boss monsters that give you bounty prizes once defeated. In fact, this isn't only for boss monsters, it can also be stuff like special wood types. You bring it to this lady for a sweet reward. If you're going to play Fantasy Life, don't start it as a novelty because it has such a slow start. It's already slow with me skipping tutorials since I already know how to play. And I don't recommend skipping tutorials in this. The mechanics aren't at all complex, but there are little important nuances here that will be missed. Commit to this thing. It doesn't need to be the only game you play for months. That would drive even me crazy. But 10 hours a week I think is reasonable if you want to get truly immersed. I get that real life gets busy and frustrating, and in a way, Fantasy Life is a power fantasy. But again, don't ruin your life with this. I can speak from experience, viewer. Please stay safe, play responsibly, and listen to music to drive by. Just don't actually do a drive-by because that's bad. Music to Drive By is the quintessential early 90s gangster rap album. Please listen to it. It's so over the top in a way that only exists in early 90s gangster rap. I gotta love it. I can't not. As is beautiful tradition, I will go over some honorable mentions, stuff I played but didn't want to talk about extensively. One Piece Romance Dawn in One Piece Unlimited World Red. Romance Dawn is so strange to me because I was eyeing this for the longest time as a One Piece fan, and the gameplay looks so cool and unique, but I never had the courage to purchase this thing. Which is weird because at the time it was selling for not even $5, and after having played it finally... Okay, so I've actually played this 3 times for 2 different other videos, and I never put it in those videos because I just didn't like it enough to add it to the full thing. And I was gonna talk about it extensively here instead, but as you see, that did not happen. Anyway, battle-wise is actually very cool. It has this turn-based combat system where you can time attacks to do max damage. The issue is everything is a boring, dull labyrinth, and the cutscenes are absolutely monotonous. I know why they do it, but I hate when anime games do a complete retelling of the story. It's mind-numbing sometimes, which is why One Piece Unlimited World Red is such a breath of fresh air. I didn't know this was a 3DS game for the longest time. I played the Switch port thinking it was its own original thing. It was also on Wii U, but that's Wii U. No, I don't know why I said that. I was literally reminiscing over the Wii U not even that long ago. I'm gonna show footage for the Switch version because it looks better. It features an original story with an original villain, and they come up with a cool excuse to have us explore the areas in the show. I first played this during my One Piece obsession, and it only fueled that even more. The music is so cozy too, and the environments are gorgeous. Genuinely looks so good. Combat is pretty whatever, but the other aspects make up for its relative mundanity. Also, I'm not a huge beat 'em up person, so take my indifference to the combat with a grain of salt. There's tons of cool side content, and it even has fishing, so that's how you know it's automatically good. Anyway, I've been droning on for... wow, way longer than I was expecting, and that's coming from somebody who talks a lot. So let's wrap this up, shall we? What an unexpected journey. While it wasn't intentional, it was interesting to revisit my entire childhood while my transition into adulthood. I don't really miss being a kid. I mean, I wasn't a kid that long ago anyway, but do you know what I do miss? The feeling of being a kid. People always told me that being an adult sucks, and maybe it does further down the road. Me personally, I'm loving it. But I do miss the quiet innocence of childhood. I see that dumb thing going around where people are like, 2026 will be the new 2016. And that's crazy revisionist history. People back then wouldn't shut up about how much 2016 sucked when it was going on. But for me personally, it was peak childhood. But maybe that's a bit of the revisionist propaganda talking. It was the year I made best friends with a Korean exchange student who moved next door. It was also the year I played in the woods all summer and got into a ton of adventures, and I look back on all the fads of that era nicely. Pokemon Go summer was genuinely insane, and I don't think we talk about it enough anymore. It was also the summer I became obsessed with Spore. I played the thing non-stop as a kid. I was committing climate warfare on peaceful civilizations at the age of 9. It turned me into a bit of a biology nerd, and my dad was a space nerd, so it fit together our two interests perfectly. I remember trying to create anatomically correct creatures with varying success. Okay, with no success actually. It's all such a nice memory, and the 3DS is part of that. I don't like to dwell on the past, but sometimes a healthy look back is nice, and this was such a fun experience. Thank you everyone for staying tuned. As someone who constantly thinks about the future, this felt very therapeutic. Have a good day, good night, good evening, and everything in between. Peace out. If you stayed to the end, good job. I have a cool new video exclusive on my Patreon. It's not edited, it's not scripted, it's just me talking, but if you want more of that, check it out. Anyway, bye.